Welcome back. It's Get Geekish, another podcast, new week, and Bino here, Derek over there. Thank you so much for joining us. What's going on, Derek?
Same old, same old. Kind of reeling still by that announcement that was made, what is it, earlier this week or earlier last week with the When We Were Young tour?
Yes, if you have been anywhere on social media recently, you've probably been flooded with notifications of all your friends sharing the posters or the doctored Photoshop versions of the When We Were Young tour posters, because I think I've seen 20 or 30 different things where people have tried to use it in the marketing or jokes or things like that. But big, huge festival bringing back all the emo bands to Vegas.
I'm not going to lie. When I first saw it, and I was telling you this beforehand, when I first saw the flyer for it, I thought it was fake. I thought it was just somebody using clip art and Canva basically, and taking labels of their bands, like, you know, the images of their favorite band names, everything like that, and putting them on like, this would be a sick lineup, because it looked
like the book cover of my high school social studies book.
That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like somebody just took their favorite band stickers and posted them on here and like, man, this would be a sick lineup. And the more I look at it, it's still, it doesn't look real at all.
It doesn't.
Live Nation
I question
presents.
you. There's a lot of bands on there that I don't think would be on the same bill at any other show. Like, especially for a show that's branded around one particular genre. It seems like they've spread their wings a little wide there.
Yeah, and I'm just looking more at this, and like the more you stare at it, the crazier it gets. Because, and we've talked about this with our previous podcast of like when emo was good, you know, like the early 2000s. And that's exactly what this is like, if this happened in the early 2000s when all these bands were in their prime, the world would have imploded or would have achieved world peace, one of the two. But looking at this now, I still cannot grasp how this is real. And especially when it was announced, it was the one-day festival in Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 50 bands on here? Maybe not that many, but still, there's
a lot of bands.
There's a lot of bands. If anybody's listening to this that's been to a festival, you know how much of a cluster those are. You know, I went to a couple of them in Colorado, and it's just one of those ones where you're like, okay, the band I want to see over here is playing at the same time one of my other favorite bands is playing, and that's way across the compound. How are we going to do this? You know, it takes some timing out. This is 2 stages in Vegas is what they said. And you said that somebody did the math where it's just 22 minutes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and I want the thing to succeed, the thing to have and be amazing, but it's not. Isn't it put on by the same people that put on the Pyre Festival, which was a complete disaster and ended up in somebody going to jail and lawsuits and all kinds of stuff?
It's also by the same people who did Astroworld, so take that as it is. I'm more looking forward to, like, if this is real, if this is actually happening, I'm looking forward to the Netflix documentary, because there's even bands that tweeted out and everything like that, like, I guess we're playing this. Like, they had no idea, and like you said, it was probably one of those ones where it was the, hey, this might be a good thing to do, and they took that as a yes and just went with it, which we've seen that happen before with gigs.
Yeah, like, hey guys, we would like this band to play this festival. Oh, sure, send us some information. We'll see if we can make somebody. All right, they're going to be headliners. Okay, put them on the flyer. Like, that doesn't. Whoa, hold on. We didn't agree to anything.
Yeah, no, and being in the radio industry, you know, being from the radio industry, I should say, we've seen kind of how the back of that, where, you know, somebody might reach out to a band and they might say, yeah, maybe we can work that into a schedule, and they'll take that maybe as a yes. Yeah, we're going to do this.
The music industry is just full of a lot of people that latch right onto the. So you're saying there's a chance,
right? I mean, it's we've seen it with Comic Cons too.
Here you go. This is 12 hours, 3 stages, 63 bands.
Oh, they've added another stage.
Chaos. They probably got some in there, but that many bands in that short a time frame, even if they do all play, they're going to be on stage for like 3 songs, then have to clean up, make room for the next band. It's going to be.
And if you
madness.
Well, and that's another thing, is if you've been to a concert, you know the switching of gear is not a. I mean, it can be a quick process, but it's not. it's since a lot of bands have that very particular meticulous type of thing, I don't know. I don't see it going well. I see a lot of people being mad. Where is it? It's in Vegas, but where's it at in Vegas? Like the MGM Fairgrounds or something? I don't even know.
Let's look out. Because the reason we started talking about this whole thing, and we're not going to spend 30 minutes bad mouthing the When We Were Young festival, because it's
no. Honestly, like I wanted to succeed just like you do, because this is an epic lineup, and most of these bands I didn't know were still together, so that warms my little emo heart that they're coming back and they're going on tour, and this is a huge thing for them. But at the same time, I cannot imagine the headache that it's going to be for not only the concert goers but for the bands themselves. Because you got some big names up here, and if they're only playing 3 songs, that's going to piss off a lot of people.
Yeah, and a lot of those bands, you see some of the names, and some of them, they're not doing a whole lot now, but other bands on there, they're not cheap. If you're going to get some of those bands coming to play like that, you're
well, and that's the thing too, is what, My Chemical Romance just did their whole thing right before the pandemic started, and they sold out concerts around the world within minutes, and they're one of the huge headliners of this with Paramore, and it's like, what? I mean, I'm sure you're gonna have some bands out there like, hey, we're just happy to be here type of thing, but
see what I'm wondering, maybe this can open the door, because Vegas is known for a lot of things, and they have a lot of these residencies where Celine Dion plays there for years, or Britney Spears has her show that goes on for months, stuff like that. Is this going to open the door where there's going to be like some other genres of music, some metal bands or emo bands or punk bands are going to be able to have these residencies? Like, all right, so June through September, you're going to get to see My Chemical Romance 5 nights a week at the MGM Grand, along with opening acts TBA or something like that. Like,
well, see, I think one step further, because I think like with bands, I don't know if it'd work as a residency, because a lot of them are just high energy and they get burnt out. But what if this would open up the door for more nostalgia, not necessarily festivals, but more nostalgia get-togethers, right? Like
a reunion show of sorts.
I mean, yeah, because when we were growing up, we always heard about the Rolling Stones reunion tour, and they're still doing them. But I mean, that was one of the things. Like, you had all these '70s bands doing the reunion tours, and I scoffed at them when I was younger. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I wish some of my bands growing up would get back together. So maybe this will open up the door. You brought up some '90s punk, 90s punk pop, early 2000s punk pop, maybe, and some of those punk pop kind of go into the emo realm, but maybe, just maybe, not necessarily a festival, but it might bring some of them back around.
Well, I think it's funny you were asking about like dream lineups for a show like this, and I think my response is, well, pretty much for 15 years of my life, my dream lineup was the Vans Warped Tour just about every summer. Being big into the 90s and 2000s pop punk bands and punk rock bands, that was the tour du jour. Like, almost every band you loved was playing on some leg of the Warped Tour.
Well, that's the thing too, is does this give an opening for the Warped Tour to come back? I never went to the Warped Tour. I was supposed to go a couple times, but I never ended up going. I always heard it was miserable, hot experience, because they always had it at a parking lot for a while at Mile High.
Well, see, I loved it before they moved it to Mile High. Not that I'm better than anybody for it. I'm just older. Used to be back at the Brighton County Fairgrounds, which had grassy areas, big trees for shade, all this kind of stuff, which was a great venue for it. And I remember one year went to the Warped Tour. I want to say it was probably like 98, 99, somewhere 2000. I don't know, but no, it had to been whatever around that time. And it was a giant monsoon. So that particular year, I think, I want to say AFI played, and Papa Roach and Less Than Jake and NoFX. And Less Than Jake and Papa Roach and NoFX are some of the last bands, but it was an absolute monsoon. And they almost canceled the show, but there was no lightning, so they let the show go on. So it turned into almost like a Woodstock-esque mud pit of us sliding around in the rain during Less Than Jake at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon for the final act of that year's Warped Tour. Oh, it was magical.
Oh, man.
People's cars were stuck in the parking lot afterward. They couldn't get out of the mud holes. Oh, man, it was good.
But, I mean, and that's the thing, too, is, with Warped Tour, with oh, man, what was it? The other festival that they did, the Mile High Festival. I don't remember what it was, but
Like Oz? Were you talking about like Ozfest or something
no,
like that?
no, there was another one that was only like a couple years. That lasted a couple of years in Colorado, and it happened at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Tool headlined there. That's the one that I went to, and I remember it was just kind of like going back and forth. It was exhausting, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe this will open up the door. Maybe not necessarily for some festivals, but maybe for some kind of, like you said, reunion tours, but without the cobweb sounding on it.
Yes, it seems like there's a good excuse to get some of these bands together and play something where they could play a weekend or play a couple shows and not have to go through the logistics of going across the country and do an entire tour. I'm like, hey, look, we're going to get these guys together. Can you guys get together for 3 dates for a show in Vegas on this time? Oh, okay, maybe we can make that happen.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is like you look at a lot of the band. I mean, being in a band, if you look at their touring schedule, a lot of people don't realize that they're usually playing a show, hopping in a bus, driving to the next city, playing that show, and getting like next to no sleep. I mean, we've heard some stories, but that's another thing with this is you said that this is 3 nights now where they added an extra night like the following week.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't understand how that's going to work, but I don't know. But I mean, I don't know.
Like everything's, like I said, everything's red flags about it. But it's hopefully it works out. But I mean, if you haven't heard about this, go look on social media. But some of the bands they have listed mentioned My Chemical Romance, Paramore, AFI, The Used, Alkaline Trio, Dashboard Confessional, Taking Back Sunday, A Day to Remember, Avril Lavigne, Boys Like Girls, Senses Fail, Silverstein, Thursday, Bright Eyes, Atreyu, Jimmy Eat World, 303, The Ready Set, Glassjaw, Seosin, Mayday Parade, We the Kings, The Starting Line. It's a lot of bands, and it just keeps going. The list just keeps going and going and going. And there's been some good festivals around, but it brings me back to the Warped Tour Festival. When you said about Dream Lineups, do you know some of the bands that have been on the most legs of the Warped Tour?
Blink-182 is probably up there.
No.
What?
Actually.
I feel like they were at every Warped Tour, man.
So the number of bands that have played 10 or more Warped Tours: Less Than Jake,
Makes
Simple
sense.
Plan,
Okay.
Anti-Flag,
Okay.
Real Big Fish, Motion City Soundtrack,
Motion City Soundtrack.
Pennywise, Silverstein, and Sum 41.
Really?
All those bands. You go to the next thing, like Bowling for Soup's been there 9 times, Motionless in White, The Vandals, been out 9 times, Atari's, Big D and the Kids Table, Bouncing Souls, Every Time I Die, Lords of Brooklyn, No Effects, Used, and We the Kings, played 8 times. August Burns Red, Bad Religion, Flogging Molly, 4 Year Strong, Guttermouth, Mayday Parade, Newfound Glory, Senses Fail, Set Your Goals, Shira Girl, Story of the Year, Test Done, and Yellow Card all played 7 times.
God, you still haven't even mentioned Blink yet.
No, Blink.
See, and that's the thing is
Blink
like,
we played Warped Tour 6 times.
what? See, that just blows my mind because like I don't know, and that's the thing too is like
Keep in mind Warped Tour. A lot of the bands were not necessarily. It was just the beginning of the commercial success for the pop punk, the skate punk, that kind of genre for it. Like Blink was, you go for, I guess, Offspring, Green Day, Blink-182 with some of the first commercial successes that were selling out big arenas across the country, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, a lot of these huge in the punk and pop punk and skate punk land, huge bands, they were moderate successes. They were not selling out arenas anywhere. They were selling out small to medium sized venues.
Well, there's the same thing too. Is like a lot of the headliners at Warped Tour were openers for some of the bigger bands. And I know a lot of bands looked forward to the Warped Tour. Yes, it was exhausting. They're constantly just going. It was just a day of just bam, let's do it. But I think it was just a lot of exposure for them. I mean, this was back in the era of MySpace where you'd hit a band, you're like, oh, cool. You can go to their MySpace page and download a couple songs. Mm-hmm. And then or vice versa. You'd hear about them on MySpace. You go, oh, they're playing Warped Tour, sweet, and you'd go and buy some merch, and that's how they get their exposure. I'm kind of sad that Warped Tour's kind of gone the way of the dodo, but like I said, maybe something like this can open up the door and let them know that there's a market for this. Granted, it's going to be a whole bunch of geriatric people out there partying with their eyeliner on, but they can maybe have Advil or Tylenol be the sponsors of it. And
well, I think it's funny, the music industry kind of turned its back because basically everybody seemed to make fun of it. I mean, even when we were doing a lot of radio stuff back in the day, there was those classic rock bands that were still going on tour and playing county fairs, and you're just like, man, Styx and Journey and Boston, you guys are still going on tour. Like, okay, just hang it up. It's time for done. But at the same time, it was refreshing when you go see some of those bands that you know that they've played that one-hit wonder they had in 1974. They've probably played that song 35,000 times at this point, but you know what? Fans are here to see it. Let's break it out. And just went all in with it. And there was something for nostalgia's sake. People that were huge into 70s rock would still go see 70s rock bands today if they showed up anywhere near their town. And it kind of got made fun of to the point, but now it's reached the point that a lot of us don't even want to, accept the fact that the music we listened to in high school is now considered oldies and classic rock by younger kids. Well, but there's the nostalgia factor that could be cashed in on. If these bands are still together making music and would still play a concert that has some of the music that people loved 15, 20 years ago, there's a place for it.
Oh, that hurts so bad. But I agree. And it's one of those ones too. It's like, you look at, we even kind of poked fun at it, back in radio, is like these bands from the 70s and the 80s playing these county fairs and everything like that. You're like, But right now, I'd much rather go see that than go stand in line and stay up till 11 o'clock at night to see a band at a venue that I really enjoyed, and go on a Sunday afternoon. Oh, they're playing at 5? Sweet. Give me a turkey leg and let's rock out to some Bowling for Soup. I'm all for that.
And let's be honest. Speaking of county fairs, we saw both the All-American Rejects, who were on this festival, and Reliant K at the Greeley Stampede, which is a rodeo.
Well, granted, those were, we had to stay later, but that was back in our younger youth days.
But even those concerts were done by 11 o'clock, period. Yep. It had to be. Mm-hmm. And, some of festivals are some of the weirdest thing. I think back to some of those lineups of the shows and festivals that I saw years ago that were opening acts. You're like, oh yeah. And then they end up being huge, huge successes. I remember seeing, I think, The Used. Before they even had anything of a hit, they were the second opener for a Goldfinger show I saw down in Denver. And I have this old Polaroid picture where you can kind of see their banner that looked like somebody done it at Kinko's with some black lettering that said The Used hung up halfway above the drums. I'm like, oh, wow, I did see them. Wow, crazy. Look at the Imagine Dragons show we saw when they came through. We got to see them in some tiny little venue, and we were at the Aggie Theater with probably 200 people watching Imagine Dragons play.
I wouldn't even say there was 200 people there. No,
it was there were nobodies, and they blew us away. And then 2 years later, they're the biggest name in music for it. I think 1 year saw Katy Perry at Warped Tour on one of the side stages.
I was gonna say, Katy Perry played one of the Warped Tours. I mean, even look at Andy Grammer too. We followed his journey basically. To where he kept stopping by the station and everything like that. And then like a few years later, he was singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. And we're just like, or like even maybe as a playoff game. I don't remember, but we're like, what? What's going on? And, now his songs are popping up in commercials. It's sang in Pitch Perfect. It's kind of cool to see these things. Yes. Yeah, we're not plugging him and everything, but check it out. But it is funny to see that, because I remember seeing, Panic. Yeah, they were headlining their own tour, but they weren't as big of a name at the time. Newfound Glory opening up for Green Day. Just all types of things. Bowling for Soup. It's crazy how all these things. And I would hands down. Actually, Bowling for Soup played here not too long ago, well, close to here, and I was like, oh man, I want to go to that, but I didn't. But it's one of those ones too, where it's like it's more appealing to us now, and we're not struggling in our 20s, because let's be honest. Sometimes it was like, oh, I bought these concert tickets, now I'm gonna have to eat ramen for a week. 2 weeks, a month type of thing.
The concerts are out of control, along with everything else. I remember buying tickets for Warped Tour, and they were like $43. Like, man, $40 for this? This is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Now can you see a concert for less than $40 or $50 a person? Like,
yeah, like a no name, I'm sure.
no, I mean for a touring act. The last time I tried to look up concerts for going to like Red Rocks or something like that, for me, the wife, and the kid to go to Red Rocks, I'm talking $180 to $270 just for 3 seats to go see a show. I'm like, I miss the days of $3 punk rock concerts in the bowling alley, the basement of the university center. Like, that was it. Speaking of, you mentioned Blink-182 on the CSU campus. Blink-182, before they made it big, they played at the Ramskiller, one of the best shows that was ever there, in the basement of the university center at Colorado State University, in a campus bar for like 200 people.
Or you have like Yellow Card that stopped by and played Moby, which, Moby's not necessarily a big arena, but it's a pretty big name to come through Fort Collins. It's crazy.
I think the music industry took this weird. They didn't know what to do with it because they had the 70s and 80s of the stadium rock, and it was okay. We'll pick out these 10 or 15 winners every year. They're going to make us millions of dollars. They'll be the biggest names in music. Everybody will know who they are. There'll be big superstars that sell it, and then they can have some of their concerts. And then it moved on to the 90s and 2000s, and bands suddenly wanted to have their own creative freedom. Imagine that. And the music industry was reeling from the music downloads because they weren't making hand over fist for pieces of plastic with music on them. And they didn't know how to figure out to thread that needle of, let a band have creative freedom, go on tour, sell merch, concert sales, ticket sales. They were just experimenting with it. And there was a lot of misses. There were some great bands that had almost no commercial success because things were timed correctly, or they were marketed wrong, or they tried to force them onto the bill of somebody else because they thought, let's put them on the opener for this show because that'll get them a lot of. Well, that's a different kind of music there, Mr. Music Man. Why are you having a
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think because there's 100%. Like, there was a couple bands where I went and saw them, and like the opener wasn't necessarily bad. Where I actually dug them, and I ended up buying the CD, but it had nothing to do with the type of music that the headliner is playing. Right? It was two different animals, two different people came here for the headliner, which I'm trying to remember who it was, but my brain. But it was one of those ones when the opener came out, I felt so bad for him because everybody was just sitting there all bored. You had a couple of diehard people who knew who they were. I found him on MySpace. I listened to him on Fuse TV, that type of stuff. I heard your music on Fresh Crops, but they were a different pull than the headliner. Mm-hmm. You hit it on the head with they didn't know how to capitalize on that. They didn't know how to market. They just kind of threw stuff together like, oh yeah, you're going with this.
Mm-hmm. And I can think of a handful of concerts that were very much light up with that. And I enjoy the concerts because I have complete music ADD, and you've been around. If I put my music player on random, you get the Bee Gees and Oingo Boingo into Slayer and Children of the Bodom into, it's all over the place. And I love train wrecks of genres. But most people don't. Most people pick a genre or two and they kind of stick to it. So you get a big crowd of people at a concert, and the one that sticks out the most to me is at the Film War. We saw Cake, Tegan and Sarah, and Gogol Bordello.
Okay.
How those three got on the same bill for a tour, absolutely mind-blowing to me. We saw another one that I saw one night, my friends saw the second night, and we had completely different experiences because the night I went, the crowd loved it, and next night the crowd hated it, but it was Flogging Molly, Andrew WK, and some super, super crusty, hardcore New York punk band. And, I mean, they're kind of the same genre, but I think side by side, it was off. And my night, people were loving it, but apparently the next night, people were like trying to boo Andrew WK off the stage because he was not their cup of tea, and it was an odd thing.
I think that's the whole thing is like record labels would look at it and go, sometimes we've all met them. We're like, Oh yeah, they kind of sound like them. Let's put them together, and it's like, yeah, maybe that one song kind of sounds like that, but if you listen to the rest of them, it's different.
Yeah, they were banking on their decade too late thought process of exposure sells records.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we get this band in front of a bunch of people, sell a bunch of records. Like, not if you put a band in front of a bunch of people that already hate them.
Well, and that's why I think, going back to the When We Were Young tour, because I mean, this is kind of what stemmed this podcast is like, you look at it and yes, a lot of these bands are emo or the pop punk, they fit that genre. Would they have necessarily toured together? No, not at all. You wouldn't have AFI touring with Paramore or Avril Lavigne. You wouldn't have Jimmy. Well, I'm sure the Jimmy Eat World may have toured. Jimmy Eat World toured with everybody, but looking at some of those, like you wouldn't necessarily have some of these bands in the same lineup. But with this tour, what they're going with the nostalgia, every emo, I mean, hands down, if you're going to listen to one of these bands, there's a good chance you listen to damn near the rest of them.
I was going to say, how many of the bands on this festival have you actually seen in concert before?
A lot. But that's
My Chemical Romance I've seen. I never saw Paramore live.
I did.
Saw AFI a couple times, saw Alkaline Trio a couple times, saw The Used a couple times, saw Taking Back Sunday a lot, saw Dashboard Confessional.
I was going to say, I think that's one that comes to mind right real quick is like Dashboard Confessional opened up for Panic at the Disco at one of the concerts that I went to, and it was so weird. Because, I mean, Dashboard Confessional, yes, is kind of emo, but it's like more acoustic emo. And it kind of just felt off. And like they were co-headlining, so I was like, this is okay. It works. It works. I don't think I've seen Avril, but I've definitely talked to her on the phone thanks to radio. She called in and we did an interview that way. Basically the one that sticks out on here that I have not seen is My Chemical Romance. I know that comes as a shock to a lot of people, but I never made it around to a My Chem show. And then they broke up and I was like, well, okay.
Trying to think of who else Glassjaw put on a good show. I saw them. The Starting Line, I saw them.
Yeah. Oh, Starting Line puts on a good show too, though. Bayside, All American Rejects. I mean, it's
the Horror Pops. Yeah, I feel like it's more of a rockabilly type thing, isn't it?
I don't see, and that's why you look at this like. Again, Bright Eyes, great band, not necessarily hard emo, but it'll work, I guess. I don't know. This is basically like taking my iPod from the early 2000s and just going, pew. So that's why I think maybe this might work. But again, after hearing the stories of people trying to buy tickets, I'm fine standing on the sidelines and seeing how this plays out. Let them work the kinks out, because maybe this will become a reoccurring thing. Maybe this will become like like how they have EDC in Vegas and everything like that. Maybe it'll become a recurring theme and they'll kind of switch up some of the headliners and everything like that. And you'll be like, all right, let's do this type of thing. I don't know. Seeing it makes me excited, but at the same time makes me go, man, is there going to be seats there where I can sit down? Because I'm old. Remember how we used to make fun of people for sitting at concerts?
Oh yeah! As soon as I realized when I go to show, if I get there early and get the upper deck seat with the seats in the front of it, I was a happy person. I realized that was probably not cool anymore. So,
yeah, I remember sitting down at a Muse show, going, "This is nice," and then going, "Why am I sitting down? Oh yeah, my feet hurt. What's happening to me?"
Do you remember? I'm thinking of one of the festivals I went to, like back in the day. I think it was late middle school, early high school. Channel 93.3. Back when it was The Adventure, had a huge music festival they put on every year. It was at Fiddler's Green. No, it was before Big Gig.
Okay.
I think it was called The Big Adventure, maybe?
The prelude to Big Gig.
Yes. Yeah, whatever it was. But they did it for a few years ago. But I remember back then it had been, probably, 93, 90, probably 90, 92 or 93. And I got to see Sublime. Saw Bradley Knoll shooting up some drugs underneath the bridge at Fiddler's Green. Face to Face was on the second stage. 311 was on the second stage because they were this new band that just had this down song that's making some radio waves. And there was a whole bunch of great bands that we saw. Who was the big? I think Geekish. No.
See what happens when you get old. Your memory fades.
I don't know if we can say this word since we get broadcasting, but the other word for bottom ponies. And they had the song of Little Born Out of Wedlock Person.
The bottom ponies. Oh my god.
The fanny ponies, is that better? Tookus ponies?
No, it's not.
But that was a good festival.
Man.
We're gonna have to relive some of those sometimes.
There's a lot of 90s bands that I wish they would get back together, and maybe this will open up the doors for them. I mean, you look at it now, like we've had 90s bands come through when we did Taste of Fort Collins. You had Third Eye Blind come through, Sugar Ray,
Smash Mouth.
Yeah,
Live.
I was gonna say Live, Collective Soul. They came through, which was it was nice because you were like, oh yeah.
There's a lot of those bands that most people in general, even myself, you hear a band, you go, oh yeah, they had that one song or one or two songs, and they start playing, and you realize a lot of those bands that were successful that you think of as one-hit wonders had a lot of songs you remember hearing or you had on, because back in the day we had to get CDs, you listen to entire albums. You just, by chance, you bought a CD for a song and you listened to it 5, 10, 15 times. You heard those other songs.
My favorite part about Taste of Fort Collins, and just festivals in general, but like mainly Taste of Fort Collins, is you have these bands that were huge in the mid to late 90s come through, right? Sugar Ray is the one that pops off my head because people always know Fly, right? And you can see that the people are there just for that one song, and then when they start playing some of their heavier stuff off of the albums.
What is this?
I know, everybody's like kind of looking around. You're like, yeah, the Sugar Ray was kind of heavy, guys. I mean, I hate to say it, but they kind of were.
Kind of heavy.
Yeah, kind of for mid 90s. But it was one of those ones.
McGrath heavy.
It's one of those ones because I mean, if you listen to it, I just want to fly. They're like, yeah, and then it goes into something else off that same album. You're like, what? So, I don't know. I digress.
I don't know about you, but I was rocking out when they played Speed Home California, that show.
Oh man, dude, I was so happy. And that's the song I was talking about. They're doing that, and everybody was like, "What? Play the bedpost song."
Every morning.
Oh, I don't know. We keep going back to the when we were young thing. I just don't know how it's going to work logistically. You're going to drop. I don't even know if the starting tickets were like $200 and something.
We had to put a down payment, didn't you? It was like tickets were starting at $19.99 down.
Yeah, that was just a down payment, but I think they were higher than that, and that's just it made no sense. And then, like you said, you're doing the math of all these bands in 1 to 2 nights. You're getting
here's some of the sign print. They added the third night, and you can sign up for your pre-sale code. So by paying them $20 right now, you're signing up to get a code to try and buy a ticket before they go on sale to the general public. And by signing up, you authorize the festival to send up to 10 automated messages regarding this pre-sale. Code does not guarantee purchase. Tickets are available on first-come, first-served basis while supplies last. Then they say that twice. They actually... In the fine print, they repeat themselves twice. That the pre-sale code does not guarantee you a ticket.
They're probably like, nobody's going to read this anyway, but we have, this under our belt just in case they come back and go, pre-saled it. It's too bad. Maybe this will open up the door for some of these bands to go, okay, people actually want to hear us again, and they'll go back on a mini tour, and they'll hit up the smaller venues. Uh-oh.
Yeah, general admission, I didn't even, $250.
Mm-hmm.
General admission plus is $419, except for oh my gosh, VIP tickets are $520, VIP cabanas are $1,250, and hotel and ticket packages starting at $500.
I mean, that's the thing too, is you're looking at the GA is just $250. That doesn't count airfare or driving out there plus hotel accommodations and food. So.
Yeah, so that's. I look at the band list, I want to go, but I look at the logistics and I go, I want to watch this on TV.
Yeah, can you guys live stream this, please? I want to sit on the couch.
And I feel like it's interesting because this has become a bit of a cultural phenomenon because of how many times it's been shared and how many people are talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it hits all kinds of different parts of me because part of me gets the nostalgic, oh man, I love these bands, it'd be great to see a show. And then part of me gets the nostalgic, I feel old because I can't think I can survive through music festivals like this anymore. And
it awakens the old curmudgeon and you go, damn, there's a lot of money, I can't afford that.
For tickets to a concert? You gotta be kidding me.
I got bills to pay.
Back when I was a kid, we used to get concert tickets for $3, and there'd be 4 bands, and sometimes they'd add a 4/5 band if they had time.
Oh man!
Yeah, so there you go. I'm not sure what the purpose or the exact what do we call it, the main thought of this podcast, other than this festival got us talking about other festivals, other types of music, and
how old we are.
Yeah, is this festival going to ruin people's taste for a lot of these bands, or is it going to open the doors for something new to happen with nostalgia tours or nostalgia shows?
Honestly, if this opens up the doors for these venues or like some of these bands to come back through and go on a tour with just themselves or one other person at like some of the dive bars around here, then I will do it because, those tickets will be like $20-$25. I will happily pay that. Just get me in the door, let me rock out. I don't have to deal with the stress of, missing out. Because that's another thing. I look at this and like I have FOMO because what if AFI is playing the same time as, A Day to Remember? And I'm like, type of thing. So
if you convince a band to have that thing to play a small venue, like, look, we're not going on tour, we're not trying to market this, we're not trying to make it the next big thing. We're literally going to get 2,000 people that loved that song you put out in 2001. I want you to play that album for everybody. Here's some money. Like, There's got to be some bands that might get back together and, mend some fences and get some handshakes from bad breakups. And say, okay, I could play a weekend with the dude. How big is that check? Okay, yeah.
Right. I don't know.
It's a second chance for music and love.
And again, if this is a big dumpster fire, then I'm looking forward to the Netflix documentary.
That is true. There's a good chance there's going to be a lot of very, very runny eyeliner.
It's true.
All right. Well, let us know what you think. What do you think of the When We Were Young festival, and what band would you want to see in full glory that isn't going on tour anymore? Let us know at Geekish, and we will talk at you next week.
About the butt ponies.
Hey, thanks for listening. We truly appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. Find us on social media at Get Geekish. And if you want more podcasts, we got plenty of them.